I actually consult not only for tourism, but also for hospitality. A lot of our business is really hospitality projects. We do from budget hotels up to about luxury. But one of our core competency was really putting the right project in a certain location. So people normally ask, is it too dense already in the market, or is it too much of a green field? There's always the right fit and the right size for the right project. So I think a lot of people were pretty much affected when Anthony Bourdain died, and I think because he has a big influence in terms of how travel is supposed to be experienced among everyone else. So he really breached into travel not just being on accommodation, but it's really experience. So that's pretty much what we all want in terms of, every time we travel, whether you travel alone, with a partner, or with a family. Tourism arrivals. I'll pretty much give you like a rundown of how we're performing as a country. In terms of tourists, comparing to other Asian, there's still a lot that we have to do, but government's projection for next year is about 7.4 million, and so far we've met about 6.6 in 2017. Now, pretty much when it comes to, say, tourism, we have like Koreans. China is actually fast in terms of, I think they met about 1 million last year, and they're moving towards, we're targeting about 1.5 million for this year for China. And of course, we have the US market because of a strong balikbayan market. But if you look at first quarter this year, we've increased about 14%. So it's still quite a stretch to meet about 7.4. However, if you look at tourism for Philippines, we're trying to hit about 12 million in 2022. But if you set aside foreign tourists and focus on domestic markets, people keep forgetting how strong the domestic market is. We're about 75, 77 million. We hit about 70, 75 million last year. So that's something that we want Department of Tourism to actually be more accurate about, because we don't get statistics quite well. Hotel pipeline. I actually have our 7107 later on if anyone wants it, but we've recorded over 100 hotels opening from now until 2021. You're talking about 20,000 keys, of which 50% is in Metro Manila, and the other 50% is all over Metro Manila. I mean, outside of Metro Manila. 50% are global brands. So what does it tell you? Hotel developers, owners, are recognizing the importance of distribution for all these global brands. So that's why you see a lot of, like the Marriotts, Sheraton, Westin, pretty much a lot of this hotels coming into the Philippines. So we were out for the longest time, we're now in. Domestic brands, yes. We heard Ayala earlier said about rollouts for SEDA. There's a lot more rollouts when it comes to hotels in the country. And they're not only specific about Metro Manila, they're also very specific about developing in other areas. So you're looking at not even, it's the tertiary cities, the secondary cities. 90% of the owners of hotels are local developers. So I'm not saying forget about FDI, but you have to look at what our market can actually also bring in. These are local developers investing on their own. So what's the driving force? New money. You're talking about people who are in construction, doing roads and bridges before. You're talking about people who's into power, consumer. Bai Hotel that just opened in Cebu, it's actually owned by someone who owns water business, and he felt, because he's been distributing a lot of water in all the hotels, he might as well put one. So it's a 600-room property in Cebu. Infrastructure, it's all this build program. So you're looking at what, 75 flagship properties in the country, roads and bridges, seaports, airports. There's so much going on. In terms of plan, we want to see that moving forward. So which means we want to see government I would always say I'm an active citizen in terms of being critical, and I want to really know. I mean, it's a generation we're in. You want to see change now. And you actually want to make sure that this promises really becomes reality. So we're really watching about everything that really opens. So Cebu launched the airport this month, but I think it's formally opening next month. We have Panglao that's opening hopefully in August. You have plans like in Clark, you have the new Sangli port. So there's a lot of things going on. Even San Vicente, wherein it's been pending for 8 years, is hopefully opening in the next couple of months. So we've got to be active citizens, we've got to be enablers, because we can't wait for things to come. It has to be this government and wait for the next government to make sure it does happen. One thing interesting with infrastructure and all the things that's being built is that you have new megacities also being, so you have the planned Clark project, and you also have Asiana City where the thing is it actually increases a lot of the real estate value also. Good, but at the same time it also makes us difficult in terms of building, because when you look at hospitality projects, sometimes it doesn't make sense to build on a very expensive plot. But this is something that mitigates trying to get people out of the metro and distributing it pretty much outside of Metro Manila. Domestic market. You have the staycationers, but one thing that's interesting is that people that travel quite often. So I know for a fact, let's say when it comes to my own staff, and I believe your staff as well, it's like they probably tear off the back of, could be a Cebu Pacific or an Air Asia, where they take off places they want to go. So you're talking about a strong middle market, you're talking about money that we've never had 10 years ago, but when you look at money now, the middle market, the strong middle market, you're talking about consumer spending. So this is quite important in terms of travel in the industry. And it has something to do also when it comes to, say, the budget airlines. So it has gotten a lot of Filipinos to travel. So what are the tourism trends and hospitality trends? Leisure, I think you keep hearing this. So it's really business, mixing business and leisure, which we would normally separate. But now when people actually go to conferences and try to, it could also be a junket tour. What happens is that the next week, or maybe they'll have the family follow in the next few days. So, and at the same time, it's part of our lifestyle. If I travel, I mean, I pretty much, to be very honest, I'm here in Manila because this is my base, but I prefer not to be in Manila. My office is actually where my laptop is. So I bring it all the time, right? So I believe a lot of the people are like that these days. And it's not just the Filipinos, it's pretty much like a worldwide, I wouldn't say even phenomenon, because it's here to stay. So I think we've changed the way in terms of generations, we've changed the way we work, we changed the way we socialize, we've changed the way we even live our lives. So it's a new lifestyle of this generation. Chinese market. I know some people are iffy about whether or not you want to take the Chinese market, but if you see the numbers, you have about 130 million outbound markets for China alone. And you're talking about what? Over 1 billion, 2 billion of population. Our own population is what? Over 100 million. So you're talking about China alone, 130 outbound market. If you look at top markets for China, Thailand, for instance, the tourist arrivals for Thailand is 35 million. Phuket gets 8 million from that. Our tourist arrivals is only 6.6. China market delivers almost 10 million. If you're looking at, say, one of the concerns of people trying to attract the China market is that they feel, depending on which tier that you actually get. So if you're getting the market from Shanghai, Beijing, this is the first tier market. Remember that even if there's the first tier, third or tertiary cities that they're coming from, the expenditures are pretty much the same. They spend about what, $2,300, $2,500 US per trip. And they travel 2 times a year. So it's a strong market. It's up to us how to be able to get a more, educated, more global Chinese travelers. But if you look at the numbers also, Japan has never complained about over-tourism when it comes to China market. So it has something to do with how you educate also the travelers, but we also got to be educated ourselves. And how do we also educate ourselves in terms of environment and in terms of sustaining our own areas? So China, I think it's a big challenge in terms of, you kind of have to do that balance, but at one point, let's not miss out on China. So we're targeting about 1.5 million this year for China market, and I think it's possible. Experiential travel, everyone keeps talking about experience, and it's not just the millennial market who actually travels the way we've envisioned it. It's actually also us, millennials. They always call me millennial, which means feeling millennial, right? So I'm sure it's everyone else too, right? So, but I've always been I've never believed that it should be categorized on a certain market. I think it's really the way we live these days. I mean, the lifestyle has totally changed. Family markets, that family travels together, stays together. I mean, I don't think it's really just coexist in terms of just being a couple, but you now see families traveling with their grandparents, with their children, their friends. So it has gotten bigger. So word of mouth in terms of how you communicate travel is pretty much now because of social media as well. So we've created hotels wherein we wanted to make it a point. There's always Instagrammable features or areas, primarily because it's something that will actually get you out in the news immediately. Global hotels. So I did mention earlier, 50% of all the hotels in the pipeline are pretty much global brands. So this is primarily because developers sometimes developers just think, I just want to be a developer or owner. I'd rather have, let's say, the whole operations and distributions handled by someone else. Rollout of homegrown and budget hotels. So aside from Red Planet, we're also responsible for doing hop-in around the country. If there's anything about the budget hotels, if it's changed the game in terms of how you do real estate, primarily because normally budget hotels are in the secondary or tertiary cities, but now budget hotels are in the prime location. So they're pretty much paying the highest rate. The lease contracts are longer and escalation is even better. So they get really prime locations. So even if you're traveling budget, it doesn't mean that you should actually conform to an area, a dodgy place. No, it has to be a prime area where you can get easy commute. You can go to your next business destination. So what's important with budget hotels is also location, just like when you're doing, so when we did these two brands, the mandate was that it's supposed to be like Starbucks, where you actually have to be able to, you're supposed to locate it in key areas where commuters can easily find. But you also have, of course, our homegrown brands, Seda for Ayala. You have Canvas, you have Bellevue, Astoria Blue. These are pretty much homegrown brands. They create their own distribution. They probably work for also with OTAs and other GDS. But at one point, there's no really rocket science here. It's actually what's palatable to any developer. So if you want to create your own brand, normally we would recommend you have to have a minimum of 3, so you do a proper rollout. And you actually share also the marketing, the cost for sales distribution, your top line head. So you need to be able to distribute it. Hostels and community spaces. I'm sure people have worked in co-working spaces. This is pretty much the new game because you're talking about a new market also. But hostels are coming into a mainstream market now. You're looking at a lot of the traveling market. So there's a junket wherein these about 1 or 2 months they travel, and they go from Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines. So you don't want to miss out on that. We've built, some hostels where in the traveling market, they really stay in the Philippines for a month. So you want to be able to capture that market also. Innovative hotels. The Henry is actually a local owner. They have 2, but in the pipeline of about another 4 hotels. But what's interesting is Citizen M. If you Google it, it's they've introduced a self check-in in the hotels. Moxie is a Marriott brand, which is like a 3-star. But when you look at a communal area, it's just very interesting, very innovative. So space has actually changed also. So gone are the days where you actually have like a separate concierge. I mean, it has gone in terms of just making it all fluid. So this is pretty much the new spaces that you're gonna see in hotels. And it's something that's very interesting to us because we want a space where we can socialize, work, drink, play, have fun. New technology. There's a self-check-in counters already in hotels. I'm quite interested with the keyless check-in. So basically, I travel a lot. I would prefer that I don't even want to go to the hotel. I normally go to where my workplace is, and I just key in. I can actually choose. But when I go to the hotel, I pass through the front office. You go to the elevator. When you download the app of a hotel, you just put it in the elevator, go to your room, and your phone serves as your key to the room. One of the things I've tried is I don't know if you've been served by a robot. I've ordered. I try new hotels in anywhere, everywhere. So there's a Yotel that opened in Singapore. You're talking about 16 square meter room. But it's super sufficient. And when I ordered for towels and water, it's a robot who actually brought it at 2 in the morning. So this is interesting. So these are the new innovations. One of the things we're very passionate about is pretty much putting the pipeline around the Philippines. I would always say I've been from Sarangani to Apari. So that's really how well we're traveled, because I don't think you can tell the country if you haven't actually been to all those locations. So 3 of the top 30 destinations happens to be in the Philippines. You're talking about Boracay, Palawan, and Cebu. I think we're moving into the 2nd month of Boracay closure. I don't actually want to go in length when it comes to Boracay. I think when you look at tourism in general, the new disruptor is government. Disruptors, just like Airbnb, similar to, let's say, Uber or Grab, disrupts the way we used to think, disrupts the way we practice, disrupts the way how we run our business. But what happened to Boracay is also disrupting how government used to run it, how our private sector used to run it, how our stakeholders used to run it. So maybe this is the way we should be thinking and how to preserving environment, because it's really serious. It's really very serious now. When you look at sustainable destinations, these are the other areas we're referring to, but there's actually much more. Urbanization in Cebu it's actually there, specifically in Mactan area. You see it going, and we want, of course, a lot of activities in terms of bringing more business to the area. I think I'm also one of the culprit in terms of pushing the country in terms of development, aside from the hotel developers. But as stakeholders, together with government, we have to actually start working together already. So just to give you, I don't know how many minutes but just to give you an overview what over-tourism. So it used to be overcrowding, but we changed it to over-tourism. So over-tourism and associated challenges. I'm sure you're familiar with Poblacion in Makati. So what's happening in Poblacion is real estate prices has really gone up. But you're talking about a community, a neighborhood wherein it's actually so expensive, the property is so expensive now in trying to beat the mainstream Makati area. So that's really alienating local residents. Damage to nature. I mean, this is what's going on in Boracay. But it's up to, we really need to push everyone in terms of being more conscious about making it a point that, I mean, like this no plastic. I mean, we have to make an aggressive role. So I would always believe that even if no matter how much we practice it in the hotel, but if every employee don't know what this actually means, sustaining tourism, this is what they bring back home. It doesn't make sense. You need to practice it at home. Overloading of infrastructure. You can't build too much. I mean, be careful with that. So that's something that we have to deliver to private sector and government as well. Degrading tourist experience. I mean, we have hotel people here, tourism people. We need to structure it in such a way we need to come up with something where the experience is still there. And of course, threats to culture and heritage. Solutions. It's never easy. I think we're just starting now. But the transition eventually, and this is being practiced. I mean, we've got a report from WTTC, and they're even trying, they just came up with a report together with McKinsey like last year. And they've actually highlighted areas such as Amsterdam and Paris. And because when you look around, it's always Chinese tourists. So they're complaining as well. But the thing is, it's, again, never an easy solution. We need to be able to smoothen out visitors over time, spread visitors across sites. So if, let's say, it's peak season on one area, you need to be able to distribute. So it's an aggressive role among everyone else. Everyone has to start talking this time. Limit access and activities, because you need to make sure you distribute travelers so they don't pollute the area too much. And adjust pricing and balance supply and demand. And I see that, let's say, what's going on in Palawan as well. When I think Javi was saying about in Socogon, wherein you have about $100 or $120, and he thinks it's cheap. You go to Makati Avenue, the rates there is $60 to $80. So, I mean, I think they're doing something right. And of course, regulate accommodation supply. So, whoever is building, whatever you're promoting in terms of tourism in this country, your wave is waiting. Thank you very much.